You're listening to Theater in College Hoops. I'm Subi. Alongside me, Taylor Damel. We are officially back. We have games to discuss, Taylor, one in particular that we're going to lead off with. But it feels so great to have college basketball tipped off. Dallas Graziani versus Zach Edey. That was one of my favorite tip-offs I've ever seen, with Purdue versus Samford. I think Graziani's like 5'7", Zach Edey's 7-2, whatever it is. But man, it is so good to be back and to have watched and consumed all of that great theater that we got on Monday. We're brought to you by Belly Up Media. Go download, subscribe, rate, and review us on whichever device it is that you use. Your college hooper of the day is Shaquille Duncan. Now, if that name doesn't sound familiar, it's because it's a very obscure name. He played at Morgan State from 2011 to 2014. So I'm trying to give our Morgan State listeners, if we have any, some sunshine, because they're licking their wounds after a 60-plus point loss. But I also chose Shaquille Duncan, Taylor, because is that not the greatest basketball name you could ever have? I mean, unless something short of LeBron Jordan.
Shaq Dunk.
Yes, but also just the name, like Tim Duncan, Shaquille O'Neal. I mean,
I know. Yeah, right.
Good Lord.
Right. All over the place, but in a good way. Yeah,
perfect.
there's a lot of ways you could go with it. Yep.
You're right. Shaquille Duncan, he is your college hooper of the day. Check out the website at theaterincollegehoops.com and make sure to follow me at CBB Theater to find out where the theat is. You should also follow Taylor at Taylor Damel. First time, baby. We're back. Let's open the curtains.
Birthday. It's your birthday. They ask me what I do and who I do it for. Come up with this shit up in the studio.
Happy birthday, TD.
Dude, it's a big day. It's a big day today.
Keep going.
Sub, I feel, what would be the way to put this? I feel stupendous, perhaps would be a way to put it. Actually, yesterday, I think I tweeted this. I couldn't have been happier. It was 9:30 p.m. 2 games had just tipped. Had an 8-leg parlay still surviving. Games till midnight. College basketball being back. That's the best birthday present. I know it's an election day for some folks around the country. I don't give a shit about that because it's college basketball season and I feel great about it. Just got back from Phoenix Beer Company here locally in McCormick Ranch. Got my meal paid for by my friends who work there. That's wonderful. My daughter Dottie's first time to Phoenix Beer Company as well. Great experience for her. She had a couple of margs, really started tearing it up there. We had to get her out of there before things went too crazy. But yeah, a great day. Nothing better than talking about the first day of college basketball on a guy's birthday. I'll tell you that.
That's true. I mean, I can't foresee, or I can't expect you to ask for anything more, right, Taylor? You have a lovely family, of course, but does that compare to 100+ games of Division I college hoops that we were entertained with?
Boy,
you can say no.
My wife's in the other room, so boy, it's close, So I lost just as much sleep staying up to watch the end of the UCLA and Washington game last night as my daughter has maybe kept me from sleep here recently. So no, as a degenerate gambler too, it's just great to have literally 100 like games to bet on per day. Like, I don't know if that's, the best thing for your family's future to say, but it's good to have options. Let's put it that way.
Plenty of options were to be had on Monday, and tons of good games. Now on paper, they weren't the most compelling. We didn't see a top 10 matchup, 2 teams that were both ranked in the top 10, but we did see some power on power. We saw a mid-major take down a power conference team, and we'll get into all of that real quick. Before we do, though, Taylor, the return of college basketball season does also mean the return of your betting segment. All right. And we're going to call them Damel Dimes. Damel Dimes isn't going to kick off just yet, but I am curious to know, were you able to complete that 8-leg parlay? What was the remaining leg? This is what you should savor this, by the way, because I don't give a damn about people's bets and or fantasy, but I am curious to know because you were staying up that late for the Washington was playing Bellarmine. Was it
Bellarmine. Yep.
Bellarmine?
And
And
then
then UCLA
UCLA.
was St. Francis, right?
Yes, correct. So we did not complete the the parlay, unfortunately. Um,
Officially back
it's
now.
just typical. I had the over in the UCLA St. Francis game, and that missed by 6 points, I believe. So shout out to UCLA for somehow only scoring 32 points in the first half against St. Francis, a team that constantly lets me down one way or another. It's kind of like I hate betting on UCLA or ASU, but I also kind of hate betting against them because you always just, in your mind, you always think, okay, maybe I'll bet for them this time around instead of actively rooting against them. And then the times you do bet on them, you're like, this is why I bet against them every time. So they did cover, but I was going for the over in that game. Thought the over was low, but yeah, I'm already unimpressed with UCLA. Maybe they're going to finish 5th in the conference. Let's put it that way.
Look, I'm not a betting guy, literally, and even figuratively. I'm not a betting man, but I would have advised potentially to stay away from UCLA only because of the roster turnover. No Tiger Campbell, no Jaime Jaquez. We got to let the young boys gel, Taylor.
I mean, and I'm not going to sit here and be like, act like I only picked 8 games out in one parlay yesterday.
There you
This
go.
just happened to be the one that was surviving the latest. I'm not trying to sit here and act like I'm just like some, I don't want to say expert, but just some sniper that can just pick out 8 games across 125 yesterday. That was just the 8 that I had, that lasted the longest. So
You're closer to that sniper though than I am like a betting man at all. It's like when Brian Scalabrine said to a bunch of pickup players, he's like, I'm closer to LeBron James than you are closer to me.
True. I would say I'm more of a carpet bomber than I'm a quantity over quality better. Let's just say if you throw enough in, one of them's bound to hit. And I'm okay with that. Like I'll fully admit, and it's worked out so far for me, in my betting life. So
he's a volume shooter. Taylor, let's dive in first though with the topic potentially of the sports world on Monday. And that was the James Madison Dukes toppling a top 5 Michigan State team in the Breslin Center, getting it done in overtime. Shocking stuff. Taylor, as I was entering the day, you don't, like I said at the top, I mean, there's going to be some competitive matchups, but I expect that from the lowly mid-major teams. I did not expect JMU to even give Michigan State a fight. A Michigan State team that a lot of folks are penning into the Final Four, and they just got completely shocked to the system. And JMU, you see it on the screen right here. The whole athletic program right now. Well, and when I say that, I mean the football team. The football team, if they lined up against Michigan State, would probably win that game. And so now you have JMU basketball coming into the Breslin Center and absolutely pulling off one of the biggest upsets I think we're going to see all season long. Taylor, take me through your thoughts, because I was thinking I'm ready to watch Isaiah Collier and Tyler Perry in Vegas, and that was going to be the headliner. That game actually turned out to kind of stink, but I was delayed from watching those guys. I couldn't see Isaiah Collier's impeccable first half because we were all glued and we were all fixated in East Lansing.
yeah, I love you're spot on with JMU athletics being better than Michigan State, which is great. Michigan State athletics is like, what if they didn't have Tom Izzo? Let's just throw that out there. Like, could they be the biggest dumpster fire in terms of like scandals in the country if it wasn't for Tom Izzo holding things down? Such a strange thing, Michigan State basketball is sometimes, because we seemingly have this discussion not to the degree of losing to James Madison on the first game of the year, but we seem to have this discussion about Michigan State every single year. Oh, Michigan State suck. It's pre-January 1st and then even pre-March, So let's say this, though, and maybe you can roll with me on this. I'm just going to suggest this. We know the answer overall to this question is it kind of doesn't matter. It's the first game of the year. Okay. I think we can agree on that. So let's get rid of that and just talk about what we find as a difficulty for Michigan State in this game. Because we know that there's 39 games until the Final Four at this point, right? So we know that it is the first game of the year and that they will probably figure it out. What's problematic to me, though, about this game is Tyson Walker scored 35 points, and the rest of the team scored for 41 in overtime. And to me, that is problematic. We know how good Tyson Walker is, a guy that, was picked by us to be, potential Big Ten Player of the Year.
I picked him.
And yeah, and a team to only shoot 5% from three at home, not ideal. To miss 15 free throws at home, not ideal. Now, is that going to happen again? Probably not, but they also got out rebounded too. They got out assisted as well, so they had a similar amount of turnovers. Um, JMU had 11 more fouls, so it's not like they didn't have opportunities. I know that it is just the first game of the year, but there are some things, at least also in the rotation, with like an AJ Hoggard not being in down the stretch at all, that we can maybe note and say, okay, so maybe later on in the year, in these other big games, of course, you and I were talking about how, of course, one of Arizona's number one top out of conference opponents loses to James Madison week 1, just like this seems to happen every year to Arizona fans. So I guess if you didn't have a coach like Tom Izzo, you'd be like, oh, this is, very problematic. Now you're probably going to say, well, this is a good springboard to say like, yo, guys, we can't just walk into the gym. Like if you're going to lose this game, it might as well be game 1, right? Because now you can be like, you can't lose this. We can't just walk into the gym, even our own gym, and just expect to win these games. But so for me, the problematic parts, though, are the fact that some of the people we expected to be contributors down the stretch for Michigan State kind of weren't, and they weren't even on the floor, which was kind of interesting. And then Tyson Walker did miss a couple free throws that really would have put the game away or would at least put them up, and they never got up really at the end or even in overtime. I can't blame Tyson Walker really for anything because he did carry the whole team, put his team on the back though. So it is a little bit of an issue that he scored 50% of their points to me, or 45% of their points in my mind though.
So I'm glad you broke it down from that perspective. I don't think any sane person is panicking. It's not time to hit the panic button. What do I always say? What's my deadline, Taylor? It's Valentine's Day, really. And when you have a Tom Izzo and his pedigree, there's no point in panicking. But there is cause for a little concern. And why that's stressful with college basketball and why that's stressful is because although it may seem like a long season, it's pretty compact. It's a 16-week season. And so if you're already at a cause for concern this early, especially with the schedule Michigan State's going to play, that's just annoying as a fan. It's a bit annoying because you have Arizona coming up, you have Duke coming up, you have a bear of a Big Ten schedule coming up. And so what this is going to do, undoubtedly, Taylor, what this is going to do is impact seed for Michigan State, which could be a big deal in terms of matchups and the road to Phoenix. Again, that's looking very far ahead, but this loss is going to look very ugly, and there's no taking that away. I don't expect Michigan State to turn around and have such an incredible rest of the season because I never expected that to happen. I've always expected them to have their trials and tribulations. What was unexpected was that it came game 1. And so now you're a little bit behind that 8 ball where you say to yourself as a Michigan State fan, over the years, they schedule so tough. And we see them coming out of those games 500, maybe a game below 500, or maybe a game above 500. But if you're a Michigan State fan, you're like, I've seen this scheduling before and these tough teams that we have early in the season. And so I don't care what the outcome of those are, or the outcome of those don't necessarily dictate. But now that, because you're usually have taken care of game 1, they have not taken care of game 1. And so now it only gets that much tougher. I mean, incredibly more difficult. So I think this is going to impact their seeding. Like when we hit late February, early March, and we're talking about 1 seeds, 2 seeds, 3 seeds, this is going to linger like a stinky skunk around Michigan State. You mentioned some of the box score and the numbers. The 2-point shooting was very similar between JMU and MSU. The 3-point shooting was the difference. And yes, I don't expect Sparty to only shoot 5% moving forward. I don't know what's more troubling, Taylor, the percentage or the amount of made threes, right? Like they only made 1 And that might be more staggering to me than just a 5% number. I guess you could say, well, they go hand in hand, but I mean, to have only made 1 3 in a game that went to overtime as well, like at home, that's such a misnomer. And I don't expect that to happen. But what does need to happen is the rest of the folks need to step up. And Tyson Walker put the team on his back, like you mentioned, 35 points. And Tom Izzo was asked about this. And the thing is, they have the veterans to do it. They have AJ Hoggard. They have they have obviously Tyson Walker, but outside of that, I think Jackson Kohler's there. They just who's the big man that I'm missing? Malik Hall. They just need to step up, and they didn't do it last night. And some of the body language was a little concerning as well. They were down 4. Yeah, the game's over for us fans sitting on the couch, but you have to at least show like, hey, we're still somehow in this game in the overtime. But look, there's no, if you're Tom Izzo and if you're Sparty, you just got to go about how you play. And if you're a Spartan fan, this is kind of how the early season starts. But the difference is this starts because you lose to Kansas, you lose to Kentucky, you lose to Duke, you lose to top 5 teams, right? You maybe not Purdue's because they got them in conference, but it's just a little concerning, just knowing their schedule and what the goals were as it relates to potential seeding.
Yeah, totally. I mean, it makes some of these other games, I don't want to say must wins because there's no such thing really as a must win in college basketball in November and December, but it makes these big out of conference games a little more important because they have to show that, okay, yeah, we do have our stuff together here. We're not going to just lose to the James Madisons of the world. And you kind of brought it up too in terms of the stats. We see this sometimes when a JMU type of team shoots the lights out, and that's why they beat another team. It's like, oh yeah, they shot 68% from 3, or they couldn't miss in the lane or something like that. James Madison only shot like 36% from the field too. And I think that's pretty troubling that a team that didn't even play nearly its best game either, not even close to their best game, beat the number 4 team in the country at home. We have been through this as fans before, not necessarily on the losing side, but where a team struggles down the stretch. And I think that was another thing that was notable is 99.9% of the time we see this happen. And the team with the Tyson Walker or the number 4 team in the country goes, oh man, the under 4 timeout hits and goes, oh geez, okay, we got to lock this down, and then they go on a 10-2 run. They don't cover or anything like that, but they end up winning by 6. You and I sit there and go, oh, look at how excited these dumb students are in the crowd for beating James Madison by 6, and get all pessimistic about it. And that's usually what we do, right? Because usually that team, the home team, the number 4 team in the country, wins this game simply over because they out talent the other team down the stretch. To not see that happen here is definitely concerning.
Yeah, and so I want to make a quick point in retraction. I mentioned Jackson Kohler; he wasn't there, but Matty Sissoko, I mentioned Malik Hall, Jaden Akins. It's just they need far more production out of those guys because from the starting lineup, Malik Hall gave him 4, Sissoko gave him 4, Akins gave him 4, Hoggard gave him 9, and then Tyson Walker went berserk. And so to your point, Taylor, what's interesting about that is at halftime, this already felt like a loss for Michigan State. Now, feeling like a loss and having it on your record are wildly different things. But as it relates to the suicides they were going to run, as it relates to the absolute tongue lashing they were going to get from Tom Izzo, as it relates to the fans' concern and the fans' unrest and anger at that one game, that was over at halftime. Because even if they came back and won, everyone's going to be focusing on what a garbage first half they played, or why was this even a competitive game? Now, the fact that they lost, like that's almost another added insult to injury, because I think the players knew that the hell was going to come. I can't imagine what the last 24 hours have been like for Michigan State. And I don't want to over exaggerate. I don't want to overreact, but my main takeaway from this for Michigan State is that there is slight concern, ever so slight concern. I don't think I can just throw this away.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the other teams that they're supposed to be competing with this year, um, Kansas won by 43, Duke won by 38, Purdue won by 53, Marquette won by 22, UConn won by 43, and all the way down the line, Houston by 53, Tennessee by 38, Arizona won by like 900. If those are the teams you're competing with, right, and you're struggling, and I know James Madison's a little better than some of these guys that they played, but yeah, it's a tough look when everyone that you're supposedly competing with is winning their game by 40 plus, and you're losing at home in overtime. Is it
Well,
almost
so
worse that it's almost worse to me that they lost in overtime? Just going back to my last point too, like, okay, so you didn't even push it out down the stretch of the game, and you still had 5 minutes when you're the far superior team, and then you were like, no, like we're still
that,
gonna lose.
that's such a good point, Taylor, because you're right. The under 4 timeout is usually when underdogs and their fan bases are like, well, it was a great first 36 minutes, but we're going to prep for the worst. And then we see it with the underdogs when they're playing for the tie and they're playing for overtime, no matter the sport, that always gets them in trouble. And the better team ends up winning. I mean, we almost saw that with Arizona USC in football. I actually don't know if who's the better team, probably Arizona at this point. But the point is, the difference was far greater in terms of talent level, in terms of teams. And you're right. Like, okay, here's an additional 5 minutes for you to just play the best 5 minutes of the night. And Michigan State just couldn't get that one stop. And that's what it kind of concerned me a little bit regarding the body language, regarding some of the rebounding efforts, and things of that nature that you're just not accustomed to with a Tom Izzo team. Like, that was a loss I've seen a million times in November against other top 5, top 10 teams. So again, a little concerned. My only other takeaway, they're not a top 5 team. That's okay. And that's why I don't give a squat about rankings. They'll be hover. I think they are a top 10, top 15 team. I'll give them a top 15 team, but they're certainly not a top 5 team based off of that. And I think maybe even a scrimmage that they played.
It's interesting. I wonder how much. I don't know. I bring this up in some capacity almost every episode. So many moving parts in college basketball now. I wonder how often this ends up happening with when you putting so many different guys together, and not just like at a Michigan State. That's just an overarching point to say, like, so what happens when you play these schools that are a little more together, these mid-major schools that are a little more together versus these high major schools that are kind of thrown together. And not that Michigan State's totally thrown together, but you know what I'm saying, where there's a lot less continuity, and these are the times to pick these teams off, I would guess. I don't know if that's an excuse, but it's just I'm just spitballing here. It's just a thought.
Now is the time to pick off the JM or to beat. It's not even pick off. Pick off insinuates like an upset, but now is the time to beat up on these guys, because the mid majors that end up pulling 15 over 2s, 14 over 3s, 13 over 4s, et cetera, those are champions of their league. I don't know what JMU was picked to finish. I know Radford, who gave Carolina a good game, was picked to finish second in the Big South, I believe. But at the end of the season, when you see these upsets, Taylor, it's as a result, or it's coming at the hands of a team that won either the regular conference or regular season championship or the conference tournament championship, right? Like, these are really good teams. And now on paper, you say they're not better than the champions of the SEC or the ACC, but at least you're going up against a champion. Here with Michigan State, like, nobody knows who they are. Nobody really has an identity. So through one game, it's pretty crazy that they're winless and JMU is 1-0. And you know what? Hey, let me say this real quick. JMU is not going to get an at-large bid, but my God, this is going to propel them. In case they didn't have any confidence, every single game they go into, they should be saying to themselves, I think they're in the Sun Belt. They should be saying to themselves, shit, we beat Michigan State on the road. Why can't we beat these guys? Just go ahead and have that mentality.
Well, they were picked by many to win the Sun Belt, so if they do, they are going to be. I mean, wait till March Madness, bracketology, and Selection Sunday. When the brackets come out, if they do make the tournament, this is going to be an extremely talked about game. We'll be like, yo, they beat Izzo and Michigan State at home or on the road. already, and now they're in the tournament. Like, they don't fear anybody, and then they'll get smoked by like 98
That's
still.
okay.
But like, but that line will shrink, and then they'll be a very bet on and pick team when they do finish at that 12, 13, 14, 15 range, whatever. And this will be, to your point, and to I guess this whole point we're talking about, this will be a talked about game throughout the rest of the year, just because they are the favorite to win their conference. Michigan State was maybe. They weren't the favorites in their conference, but they were right up there with Purdue. So this isn't a game that's going to go away for either of these teams, especially when we come to March 11th or 12th or whenever Selection Sunday is this year.
I'm telling you again, no need to panic, Sparty. You're okay. You're fine. Believe in Tom Izzo. Believe in the system. Follow Tyson Walker, but it is gonna that there's gonna be a slight little stink. You know, when you maybe get a little stink coming from the sink or the dishwasher, or maybe you're like, nah, let's take the trash bag out, even though it's only half full. That's kind of the stench that's going to be lingering around for a little bit. Let's move on though, Taylor, now to Jersey. All right. We know who runs that state in basketball. There's a hierarchy when it comes to college basketball in New Jersey, and standing at the top are the Princeton Tigers. Shout out Brett McConnell. Shout out Luke Gore, our guys. But man, they go and beat Rutgers for the first win of the season. What an awesome victory here for Princeton. Taylor, I'm just so happy for them. And also another good Jersey team, FDU. I'm happy for them because they didn't rest on their laurels. It was very clear they didn't rest on their laurels, but Princeton specifically, after going to the Sweet 16 and showing the country that their run really wasn't a fluke, because right, like you beat Arizona, people think it's a fluke. Well, they handled a pretty good Missouri team, and then they gave Creighton a very good game. People forget that they gave Creighton a very good game. To hear all of the praise, and Fanta was on campus, Princeton got a lot of press clippings. And the question was, are they going to read it? Are they going to rest on their laurels? The answer is clearly no, as they beat a quality Big Ten opponent. They beat Steve Pikiell's guys, and they get a great start to the season. And again, Taylor, this is losing two guys from their Sweet 16 run. Tosan gone, and Ryan Langborg, who is going to see Rutgers actually this season because he's at Northwestern. So what a great win for Princeton. I can't stress that enough. And it's been a really good run of basketball in New Jersey. We talked about St. Peter's a couple of years ago. We talked about Princeton last year. FDU won. This has been a really good stretch. And you know what? Rutgers isn't a complete slouch, but I thought this was just super impressive. They were lights out from three, Taylor, which is what you should be accustomed to when watching Princeton. I think they shot, what did they shoot from three? 45%. 45% from beyond the arc. On the flip side, Rutgers really struggled, only shooting 29%. You think they missed Cam Spencer a little bit, but what a great win for Mitch Henderson and Princeton. And one other thing, this is huge for them as it relates to building momentum, because the Ivy League is very difficult. All that matters really is setting yourself up to even make the Ivy League tournament. And right now they're doing exactly that. It's only one game, but man, I'm so impressed with them.
Yeah, I think I think in some ways it says just as much about Rutgers, and maybe kind of echoing the Michigan State thoughts, is a little bit of a disappointment here. Very impressed with Princeton. Don't get me wrong when I say that. Princeton really has no bench. All five of their starters played 28 or 29 or more minutes, and the two guys that only played 28 and 29 minutes were in foul trouble. Probably the only reason that the backups played at all. A little disappointing if you're Rutgers to only they only took 7 free throws, and you're a high major Big Ten school with a bunch of 6'11", big guys, should be physical guys on the team. Same complaint. I mean, since you brought it up, we can walk this back to Arizona playing Princeton last year too, where it's like, how do you have like the tallest team in the country and you can't beat these guys? Like, just dump it inside and beat them up. And yet they have prevented that against a number of teams here.
Didn't Rutgers also get out rebounded?
I mean, they lost, so it wouldn't be surprising to me.
Yeah, they got out rebounded by Princeton too. Yeah,
correct, and including on the offensive glass as well. So again, they didn't really get out. I mean, they did shoot better from three, don't get me wrong, but they didn't really get outshot as a general sense. There was only a 3% differential. Now, 3-pointers were the difference in the game, as Princeton did hit 5 more threes and obviously won by 7. So you can say that was the difference maker in the game. But it is a little interesting to say, okay, what is the strategy if you're a Rutgers, or going back to the tournament last year, if you're a Missouri, if you're a Creighton, if you're in Arizona, is you got the size and you got the athleticism, right? Why aren't you going to the free throw line 78 times against a team like Princeton? So a little bit to question there as Rutgers, but going back to your point, we should be, and maybe walking back what I first originally said, yeah, we should be more impressed with Princeton than we're giving them credit for, or than I'm giving them credit for. If you look at their performance, across those games that I've been referencing, that's a lot of good teams that they've played and a lot of wins against those good teams. And I'm not sure how good Rutgers is going to be this year. I don't think, we can't necessarily speak on that, but when you're going out there, like you said, losing, a couple of guys from last year's tournament run, this is a program, some would say now. And, they certainly have an offense that we know and love, but this is a program that is now potentially doing this year in and year out. Will they have other opportunities to prove that? They don't have too many other big games on the schedule outside of the Ivy. This was probably their number one non-conference game. They play a Bucknell, they play a Duquesne, a Furman, so on and so forth. So for them to win this game was kind of their flagship non-conference game. And again, probably one that we're talking about again on Selection Sunday, as these guys are, again, the favorite to win the Ivy League. If they do that and get in, that's going to be the number one game on the board. Hey, win in to Rutgers and beat them on the road.
What I love about Princeton is that there's no laissez-faire attitude. And I'm not saying that is the case with big schools, but what's that meme with the elder gentleman in the Michigan hat? He's like, this shit means something to me, man. This stuff means something. Like, this means stuff to Princeton. They're not afraid to take on big name schools. They're not afraid to take on a Pac-12, an SEC, a Big East, and now a Big Ten school. All right. They're not afraid to go up against some of the best bigs in the entire country, including Umar Ballo, including Ryan Kalkbrenner, and now Cliff Amarui, who is very good and very talented, right? And it means something to that. I guarantee Mitch Henderson was saying, look, this is a battle for Jersey. All right. Like, I want to be able to stake our claim as the best team in this state. And the way that Princeton plays is very inspiring. I think a lot of teams can draw from Princeton, and it inspired me. It's why I watch Princeton, and I say to myself, that's why I love college basketball. That type of effort, that type of teamwork, and I credit them first, Taylor. And sure, maybe it was a subconscious thing, but like, I credited Princeton first because, one, their defensive strategy, although it sounds super easy, right? If you're an opposing coach, it's clearly not. Princeton does something. I remember talking to Brett McConnell over the offseason, and he said, we just packed the paint and we had to be sturdy against guys like the bigs I had mentioned. And they've been able to do it now, as you mentioned, for the past like 5 games, man, dating back to last season. And so a second part of that that's kind of related to it, Taylor, is I saw this result and it just did not shock me that much. And if you take an alien, or let's say our wives instead, and just be like, hey, a Sweet 16 team from last season just beat, or just quote unquote upset, a Big Ten team that didn't make the tournament, they'd be like, well, yeah, what's the big deal about that? And so that's kind of where I'm kind of with them in that sense as well. I'm saying to myself, Princeton has proven what they can do over the last year and a half. Rutgers they completely folded at the end of last year. It's actually kind of like looking at 2 different basketball programs going in different directions. So that's why I wanted to kick it off with Princeton, is I think in my mind, this was more about Princeton than it was Rutgers.
Yeah. And I wouldn't disagree with that at all. It is just a little disappointing when you have if you are that larger school, just like the Michigan State factor there. And the fact that this is, Princeton's game travels, which is really something that you can't say about a lot of programs in the country. Good foreshadowing on you to have a couple Princeton guys on here in the off season. Look at you.
Yeah. Well, I was definitely using that when to continue to reach out to them and tag them on Twitter like I'm some sort of 4-year-old annoying pissant like grabbing at their leg, but you got to do it.
Listen, as a guy who tries to do the same thing on a weekly basis on Instagram for business himself, yes, I understand.
So Taylor, those were two big games that I wanted to touch on, and I'm glad we started off the program giving our sincere takes and our serious takes. Let's have some fun though, because did you see the end of the Louisville UMBC ending? Dude, let's go through this because I got it pulled up. All right. I want to go through it. It's the last couple possessions, and it's just a comedy of errors all over the place, man. I mean, I genuinely can't believe what I was witnessing, but then at the same time, I was like, yeah, this kind of makes sense because Louisville is complete garbage. So let me set the stage here. Okay. Louisville is up 92-90 on UMBC with 22 seconds left, right? UMBC now has the ball. All Louisville has to do right now in this is get a stop or at least apply some pressure. Let's hit play here. All right.
Has 2 and 26 points. Brown
Absolutely zero pressure there, Taylor. Can we start with that? A straight line drive to the basket to tie the game. Where the hell am I there with that Louisville possession? Defensive possession.
I mean, there's a reason this team was like the worst team in college basketball last year. High major team in college basketball last year.
So this gets even better.
Basket,
we're now tied,
we're all tied up with 18
at 92
seconds left to play.
with 18
and
seconds
one
left.
final
Okay,
possession for
18
Louisville.
seconds left. Let me hit pause. What are you thinking here, Taylor? Last shot, right?
Let's pull the ball out. Let's get set up. We've got 2 timeouts left as well, which is
I didn't even notice that.
Which is great. And let's start the offense with what? 8 seconds left, 9 seconds left. So if we miss our first attempt, maybe an opportunity for an offensive rebound, but not enough time to go the other way. Again, not 1, but 2 timeouts left. So I'm all for letting the kids decide the game, right? I'm all for coaches, if the team is in a rhythm, to let things run. This is not how this possession goes by any means. So again, 2 timeouts left. Could have maybe drew something up here, drawn something up.
Absolutely appalled at this decision making from Louisville. But then again, why? Why should I be this surprised? So I just rewound it a little bit because I want to hear the commentators' input, because he says something similar, like Louisville should hold for the last shot. So hang on, I just rewound it a
2
bit.
and 26
This is
points.
again the
Brown
UMBC tie.
And we're all tied up
All
with
right.
18 seconds left to play and one final possession for Louisville. But should they choose to hold it? Trey White goes right to the basket.
Should they choose to hold it? And that was the most insane play of the game. So Louisville now, first of all, the announcer, he says, should they choose to hold it? Because he's seeing this guy going to the rim with 10 seconds left. Like, are you trying to win this game with 9 seconds? Throws up some nonsense. UMBC has the ball. Credit to the Louisville player, I guess. Doesn't give up on the play. Rips it from the UMBC player and just throws an alley-oop for 2 points there for the Cardinals.
This is such a college basketball play, by the way. Like, I know that you and I like college basketball more than the NBA, and we both love the NBA too. But this would never happen in the NBA. Like, you're holding for the last shot. Any shot you get is a good shot, essentially. Because as long as the other team doesn't get an opportunity to tie or win the game, then worst thing that could happen to you is going to overtime. For him to take this drive and to put up a very contested layup, again, with 10 seconds left, I also, again, the coach can call timeout at any point before the ball is released. When you see him take his first step, you've got a second, let's call it, from where he starts to really make it look like it's obvious that he's going to the rim, which is about at the top of the key. You've got about 2 steps, maybe a full second as a coach to be like, no. Let's pull this out. And yet they don't do that.
Man had a desire, all right, to be the hero. Now, most kids when they're growing up, they say, "Yeah, you always dream about it in the backyard. The buzzer sounds and the crowd goes crazy. You see the red lights." He wanted to get the game winner with 7 seconds left. I don't know if any kid wants that or wanted that, but he certainly did. Okay, but he rips it back, gets the ball back. And how about UMBC? What an awesome defensive possession, only to get it ripped from you. Now you could argue it was a potential foul, but what a way to go down in this game. So now it is 94-92 Louisville with 8 seconds left. Okay.
Cow. Trey White
So we're playing it again, just absolutely appalling basketball. Rips it,
away from him,
throws it up. And now Louisville foul.
From
Louisville decides to foul up 2. And so UMBC is at the line. Go ahead.
So your most famous ESPN moment was because a team that we rooted for fouled in a tied game intentionally. So
what's worse, in a tie game or down 2 or up 2?
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, that's worse. You're right. I mean, that is worse. So continue on here, though.
Oh, my goodness. All right. So Louisville fouls. UMBC's at the line to tie the game with 2 seconds remaining.
51% free throw shooter
51% free throw shooter, true to his name, goes 1 of 2. Now, hang on. He misses the second one. You think we're done, right? You think this comedy of errors is over. As a matter of fact, how could I miss this? Taylor, the reason he was at the line is because he got fouled when he clearly stepped out of bounds, the UMBC guy. I mean, I think he had 2 feet out of bounds, and the ref just didn't decide to call it and instead decided to call a foul on Louisville. So that is also very college basketball, where everything leading up to this point, you think to yourself, there's no way they can outdo themselves in idiocy and stupidity. And yet here we are. The refs are like, you're both awful idiot teams. I'm going to join the party and not call an out of bounds play. So 50% UMBC shooter from the line does go 1 of 2. All Louisville has to do is grab the rebound, get a foul, pad your stats, maybe win the game by 3 or 4. But we're not done, Taylor, because UMBC gets the rebound, only for them to juggle the ball and not get a shot off. All things considered, this might have been the dumbest ending I've ever seen. It's like that Billy Madison scene where the proctor, the mediator's like, we're all dumber for listening to what you just said. We are all dumber for having watched that. Finn.
It makes you ask the question, how did these teams put up 187 combined points with this type of performance? And we're calling, or they're calling, whoever they are, that the last play for Louisville in alley-oop. And alley-oop generally means that it was like intentional. And after he ripped the ball away, he kind of, I don't think he was intentionally trying to throw an oop. He was just kind of throwing it up, like to keep it in bounds or kind of towards the player. So good on I don't remember who it was, but good on whoever Louisville players was there to catch it and dunk it. It's always classic too with that 50% free throw shooter. If you're on the team that you don't want to win, he's always making those. Except for, I guess, in this situation. But I think it was a genius Jeff Goodman there tweet about how, last year this is a game that Louisville loses. I was like, well, they kind of should have lost this one too, man. Like, you can't be taking anything away from this game and being like, oh yeah, an improved Louisville squad, which just ended the game like that and somehow beat UMBC by 1 point, 1 whole American point. Like, yeah, no, we're not taking anything away that Louisville is somehow better this year than they were last year because of this game.
I think he also mentioned like Louisville has no business being in tight matchups with UMBC. But again, I can't remember the last time I expected a Louisville team to smash a team. I really don't. They're almost like Georgetown, which, by the way, I think this day last year, they snapped their 21-game losing streak with an overtime win against Coppin State. That made my 5-year journal, as a matter of fact, Taylor. So, I mean, like, you're right. The only thing I took from this game was what we just witnessed was the calamitous ending. And I think my favorite part was the announcer just being like, is he is he not pulling this out? And look, Louisville is 1-0 when it's all said and done. Just great humor.
You and I have always talked about how we could never be announcers because all we would do the whole time is go. And that's essentially what that announcer did over that last stretch. You notice he didn't say anything about what was happening. For the there were essentially 3 plays that kind of happened in a 2-second period here there. He didn't mention any of them. That would be me if I was a live announcer of a college basketball game.
It really is the perfect game to show the difference with respect to fandom, like you had mentioned. Like an NBA fan is watching that after having just watched, let's say, Kevin Durant and Victor Wembanyama do things that we've never seen on a basketball court. Now, I haven't necessarily seen that either. So from the same perspective, we haven't seen 2 things on the basketball court. One is so much more pure and beautiful, but I find this to be beautiful as well because it's so disgusting. What a great finish, and I cannot wait for more of those with Louisville. Taylor, let's move on to some very quick hitters. I got to shout out McNeese State getting revenge for their headman, Will Wade, who is still suspended or out, not on the sidelines. But I say revenge because Will Wade was the head coach at VCU, not necessarily him leaving VCU in an unceremonious fashion like he did at LSU. But McNeese State, credit to them for going to VCU and getting the win. They controlled the game from the jump, Taylor. And the thing I was surprised with was seeing a Ryan Odom-led team who were so used to playing well and playing consistently and being tough at Utah State. It's a different beast, I suppose. Well, I don't know. Is the Mountain West different than the A10? Who knows, right? I don't know if it's that different, but I was shocked to see a Ryan Odom-led team come out that flat against an inferior opponent in McNeese State. As it relates to one of the guys I said to look out for on my all-transfer team, Max Shulga. He led the way with 22 for VCU. So from an individual perspective, I had an all right night. Tyson Walker, who I picked as Big Ten Player of the Year, dropped 35. Shulga, one of my better transfers to the A10, dropped 22. Just a bit surprised to see a Ryan Odom-led team not be juiced up and ready to go night 1 at home.
Well, and a big factor in that is, they're down 9, which is a lot. Don't get me wrong. They're down 7 with about 2 minutes left. Not in insurmountable lead by any means. They don't score for the last minute 58 seconds of the game at home against a McNeese State. Troubling stuff there. Shahada Wells, I believe is how you pronounce his name. Shahada Wells scored 23 there for McNeese, led the way. And McNeese shot almost 50% from 3. So, going back to like the James Madison, oh yeah, well, I don't know why they won. This is clearly why they won in this game. They outshot VCU on the road. But yeah, troubling when your team at home against an inferior opponent, you can't score for the last 2 minutes of the game.
Yep. One of the marquee matchups of day 1, well, because it was 2 power schools, Georgia, Oregon. I was saying if Oregon had any sense of school spirit, they would try and avenge the 49-3 loss that Dan Lanning and his boys took to Kirby Smart's team in week 1 of last year's college football season. And they did, thanks in large part to N'Faly Dante's performance. Very impressed with Dante night 1. I thought we were going to get very limited minutes from Dante if he was going to play at all. He did obviously play, and he played far more than, let's say, 10 or 15 minutes, whatever the quote unquote pitch clock was for him. He had 20 plus rebounds. And again, the guy was going to be on a minutes restriction. And some were even saying, if he's even going to suit up? He has that injury over the offseason. But N'Faly Dante, what a terrific force for the Ducks in game 1.
73 total boards for Oregon. That's a ton of boards.
Golly.
That also means there were a ton of missed shots. 45 rebounds for Georgia, which means that there were a lot of missed shots in this game. So I guess my concern for Oregon, a team that's supposed to compete in the top half of the pack, is that they did only shoot 48% from the free throw line. A little concerning there. because the free throw line's the same length in every court in the country. So that would be my concern in this game. But in Dante, an incredible performance in 29 minutes, 21 boards, is the current leader. It was the highest amount of boards any player in the country got yesterday across, like you said, 100-something games.
Yeah. Let's also give a quick shout out to Nate Biddle. If they go double big lineup, Dana Altman, that'll be interesting to see. But Nate Biddle had a really good first half for Oregon, decent second half as well. He's a 7-footer, and then Brennan Rigsby. Did you see this white boy get up in the first half? He had a wide open N'Faly Dante for an easy alley-oop, which Dante would flush 100 times out of 100. And Brennan Rigsby, who is not as big as N'Faly Dante, decided to jump stop off of 2 feet and throw it down for an electric dunk. So shout out to Brennan Rigsby as well for giving us one of the dunks of the day for sure.
Rigsby with a great stat line in 28 minutes was 6 of 9, scored 16 points, had 6 boards and 3 assists off the bench. You get a guy like that with that stat line off the bench, you're probably going to win a lot of games.
Brennan, don't call me Eleanor Rigsby. Work with me on the last name. Beatles, shout out. Taylor, last quick hitter I wanted to touch on was UNC Radford. That was actually a very good game I would say for about, let's say for about like 30, 35 minutes. And then UNC did pull away, which was good. But UNC's defense in that first half was a bit troubling. I think they gave up 41 first half points. Second half wasn't much better. They just continued. They got a few more stops for sure. The offense was humming. It was definitely clicking. I love what I saw from Harrison Ingram. There's going to be an adjustment period for Elliot Cadeau. He should only be a senior right now in high school. He reclassified. But this was a somewhat encouraging start for UNC on the whole. But that first half defense was very, very troubling against a good Radford team. I will say Radford's very good. They have about 3 players or 3 starters that I think could contribute majorly on any ACC team.
Yeah, you know what I liked from North Carolina in this game specifically is that no one on the team had more than 2 turnovers, which you like to see, something that's kind of plagued them in the last number of years. Of course, one of those guys that plagued them in that field or in that stat is no longer with them. But, you know, this is what you would have liked to see from a Michigan State. Terrible first half, but they almost covered. And I know that not everybody cares about that, but that does go to show you that like they did turn it on in the second half. Baycott, of course, had a 25-13 game, which we'll see a lot from him this year, I suppose. RJ Davis, he played pretty well, I guess, 13 points. This team probably could have shot a little better from 3. If they do that, they win by a lot more. First half stats were a lot different than the second half stats for Radford. Radford ended up only hitting 5 threes after the first half. And really didn't really do much in the second half in terms of keeping the game close. What you would expect to see from a team that's supposed to be pretty good this year in North Carolina. And yeah, I mean, I guess you could say you'd be concerned about the first half, but I think sometimes a team just needs a little like, okay, let's get going. And then North Carolina clearly did.
Hey man, don't forget I took them as my ACC champ. You got to brag when you can, because in the middle of the season, some of my picks are going to just be in the complete gutter. So right now I'm taking my victory laps. Taylor, do we have a little theater going on in Bloomington there? We're recording as the FGCU Indiana game is going on.
It is tied there currently with 13 minutes left. And a guy I know did take Florida Gulf Coast plus 11 in this game. I don't know. Not going to say who that was, but a guy I know.
Wow. What a lovely, lovely segue. Let's get to it. We're calling it Damel Dimes. Are you okay with that? This is your segment. So I want to make sure you have the final say, but this is what I came up with. So let's workshop it if you want to. But Damel Dimes, our betting corner, our expert, our guy, you are the marksman. You are the sharpshooter. First of all, tell me what you think about this name. And then second of all, give us some winners.
I like Damel Dimes. I'm cool with that.
All right.
Wish you could have worked Taylor the Impaler around there somewhere, but that's okay. That's a topic for another time.
Let me think. All right.
Tough. Still known
as Taylor the Impaler, yes.
Still known as that in some corners of Tucson, I think. So not sure. Can't confirm or deny that. But all right, let's get it going here. Tomorrow or today, as you're listening to this podcast, there's a significantly less number of basketball games than there were in the first 2 days of college basketball this year. So let's just go with the 3 kind of most notable games. A lot of them are kind of like your low major D1 versus a D2 type of school. They're not really going to have great lines or even lines at all. So what I'm going to start with, though, is maybe a surprising pick. Florida Atlantic, Final Four team from last year, is playing your kind of some boys from your backyard, Mr. Subramanian, and that's Loyola Chicago. Now, Loyola Chicago, not a great year last year. After going to the tournament of the first, when the Drew Valentine's first year, they really had underperformed last year. And so these 3 picks, this one included, are not going to have anything to do with talent, anything to do with stats, anything to do with anything other than feel. Florida Atlantic, major expectations on them this year. And we talked about this in our preview episode as it related to Florida Atlantic. Will they have a hangover? And I think they will. I'm not saying they're going to lose this game, but I am going to take Loyola Chicago plus 4.5. Loyola Chicago not playing at home, but I believe this game is neutral site in Chicago, so they should dominate the crowd there. So I'm going to go Loyola Chicago plus 4.5 against Florida Atlantic. Now, another game, same arena, Arizona State against Mississippi State. Now, I don't mean to play biases at a time like this, but let me go ahead and play biases at a time like this. Arizona State is replacing a lot of pieces, a team that's probably going to finish 6th or 7th or worse in the conference, I would say. Mississippi State, slightly more talented team. I'm going to go Mississippi State, again, neutral site, -4 against Arizona State. And then for my last game, there is actually a little bit of legitimate strategy to the last pick I have here. I think, at least in my opinion, it's good to pick a team that's already played a game to cover against a team that hasn't played a game. And that's where I'm going with in Canisius visiting Syracuse. Syracuse is a 12.5 point favorite. Judah Mintz he didn't shoot all that well, but he scored well in his first game as an Orangeman there. So I'm going to take Syracuse at home -12.5 against Canisius. Canisius has not played a game yet, and Syracuse has played a game, albeit, they only won by 11 against New Hampshire. Again, hate to beat a dead horse here. They've played a game. They've already have some tape to review. They've already gotten kind of the preseason butterflies out. So that's Syracuse, Loyola Chicago, and Mississippi State.
I like that. Didn't feel good. First one. Getting our bets in here.
It always does, Sub. It always does.
I completely forgot FAU's at the crib.
Yeah, they're in your bet. How far is Wintrust Arena from you?
Not very. I actually caught a Butler DePaul game a couple
That
years
is
ago.
DePaul, right? Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. When we were doing Whole30, my wife and I was like, can't really do anything, but I can enjoy this game sober. Like, do you want to come? Like, let's do it. Off that, obviously, right now. But yeah, Wintrust, not very far whatsoever, Taylor. I love the winners. I'm glad we're back. We're going to be tallying up how and seeing how successful Taylor is throughout this season. Am I setting you up for failure with this type of messaging here?
No, I mean,
I don't know. I thought I saw a little groan face.
No, we're putting it out there. I'm here to make predictions. I'm okay with being wrong. If I am, that's fine. You always got to get through the first part of the year, figure out who's good, who's got some continuity, who doesn't. Kind of like college football. I mean, it's the same as college football when you're just kind of, for anyone who's played common opponents or anything like that, you're just kind of throwing stuff at a wall to see what sticks. And I'm okay with that. If these 3 picks are wrong, then we're just going to go 3-0 the next weekend. That's fine.
That's all right. We saw Michigan State lose week 1, all right, or game 1. We expect them to bounce back. Looking forward to all of these picks. Taylor, this is our last new segment before we get to some other segments debuting next episode, or maybe this episode after that, but not so mid. This is going to be a segment, Taylor, where we want to highlight anything and everything regarding mid majors. Okay. Because it's very easy for us to get so focused on the power teams. And it's easy, honestly, for us to talk a little mid major now But once conference play starts coming, there's going to be some big storylines. So I want to make sure we carve out time and stick to pretty much our roots, why we got started, how we got started, and that's focusing on everyone, because I'm not doing the feet tweets for every single game. I'm doing it only for the ones that I can have eyes on and the ones that I have the bandwidth for. But not so mid. Let's prop up our mid-major players, coaches, and teams. I'll let you go first. Who you got?
Well, so we're so hip by using mid, by the way. What are we? As a guy who
I
turned 30,
felt very old.
as a guy who turned 34 today, God, that's no cap, Sub. All right. Anyway, so I'm actually going to prop up 2 players that lost on their first game of the year, and that's Arkansas Pine Bluff. We've got 2 players from Arkansas Pine Bluff. 2 of them. How do you lose a game when Kylan Milton and Joe French go for 34 and 30, and you lose 101-79? That's unbelievable. The stat, they lost to Missouri. Yeah, it's a high major school. You're talking about the next highest score. Only 5 players scored on this team, Arkansas Pine Bluff. You had 34, 30, 5, 4, 3, and 3. So I'm not sure if maybe the rest of the team is mid, worse than mid. But I'm gonna prop up those 2 guys from Arkansas Pine Bluff for putting up 2 of the best performances we saw yesterday. That's Kylan Milton and Joe French there. Like, I mean, they didn't even really shoot poorly from the field. Like, Kylan Milton shot 8 of 10 from the field and scored 34 points. He went to the line 20 times. So I know it's in a loss, but I would hate to have 2 guys from the same mid-major team score 30 points and not talk about them.
I'm glad you mentioned them. Wow, Arkansas Pine Bluff kicking us off with the not so mid segment. I'm going to give a hat tip to Abilene Christian. All right, ACU. They go into Stillwater, baby, and they beat the Cowboys. Great game from ACU. Oklahoma State, they held Oklahoma State to only 5 made threes. And look, Oklahoma State, you shot 40% from the free throw line at home. That's insane. That cannot happen. But what's really impressive with Abilene Christian is that they didn't really shoot the leather off the basketball. We talk about 3 mid-major teams, Taylor, that had great wins, right? Princeton, they did shoot the leather off the basketball. JMU, they did not. They still won. And then Abilene Christian, right? They did not either. They only made 5 threes all game, but yet they still found a way to win. 3 of the 5 starters for Abilene were in double figures. So you talk about your 2 studs right there over at Arkansas Pine Bluff that combined for 60 plus. Maybe we need a little bit more point distribution. And Abilene Christian did very well there. 3 of the 5 starters in double figures. Boards and assists, they played Oklahoma State even, which I think was the determining factor in this game. That and Oklahoma State missing a ton of free throws in a game that they only lost by 5. Now, the only other thing, so credit to Abilene Christian. Happy for you, hug for you. You're not so mid. The only thing I want to additionally say here, Taylor, though, regarding Oklahoma State is maybe you should think about and focus more on your program than whining and complaining and pissing and moaning about other basketball teams and the lack of repercussions or punishments that they're getting. Because while you're losing at home in Gallagher-Iba to ACU, and while you're also complaining about Bill Self and Kansas not getting any repercussions, Kansas is winning by 40 plus. They're putting players in the NBA. They're a year removed from a national title. You know what else Bill Self is doing? He's probably wiping his big morning dump with that insane contract that he just got. Lifetime contract for Bill Self. All right. Flushed with cash is Bill Self. So Mike Boynton, Oklahoma State, I advise you to focus a little bit more on your program because you're not beating ACU, man. All right. And so when you're not doing that, you should worry less about the Kansases of the world. That's all I'm saying. So hat tip to ACU. Taylor, awesome first episode of the season. So glad to have you back, my friend. We will catch you next time here on Theater and College Hoops.